In this video I'll show you the easiest way to back up your sourdough starter so you never need to start again. This is Joe's kitchen and I've been baking sourdough at home for almost 2 years. I didn't actually have a sourdough starter backup when I smashed my sourdough jar all over the kitchen floor. Step 1 is to ensure your starter is at room temperature. If you keep your starter in the fridge, then remove this and let it come up to room temperature. Then feed your sourdough starter using your normal process. Here it's a ratio of 1 part starter to 1 part bread flour to 1 part water. And for me, anywhere over 25 grams is enough to dry and store, although you want to have more than this so you have left over afterwards. So just run the numbers to make sure you'll have enough. The starter's ready for drying out when it doubles in size. Flatten out some baking paper onto a work surface or countertop. My starter has risen and fallen before this stage, and if it hasn't, it just takes a little bit longer to revive, so it doesn't make a massive difference. I've recently changed to a stronger flour and have been keeping on top of feedings, so the starter's a little bit more elastic and is actually quite hard to get out of the jar. Take out as much starter as you want to dry, but I'm going to take out 3 scoops here. Spread your starter out onto the paper, and while you're doing this, just make sure you spread it out as thin as you possibly can. And if you've got more than 50 grams or so to dry, this will take up quite an area on your worktop. If your starter's spread too thick, it might take a lot longer to dry or might not even dry at all. Leave your starter on the paper to dry for a day or 2, but this might take a little bit longer depending upon the temperature and how thick you spread it. It's important here that your starter dries properly, otherwise you won't be able to store it for a long period of time. When it dries, it looks and feels a little bit like a poppadom. Break up your dried starter into little pieces, and I'm using a NutriBullet to blend it, so I'm just breaking it up here into the jar. Pick up any loose bits and any big bits that you need to, just crush it straight into the jar. Stick it in the blender and blend it into a fine powder. You can easily just break up your starter and leave it in a container, but I find it's a lot easier if you just blend it now, and it makes it easier to revive later on. I've ended up with around 32 grams here, which is plenty for storing and having some left over afterwards. Stick it in an airtight container, and I like to label it with the date of drying. Now and again I'll actually replace what I've got in the cupboard with a new backup, just to be safe. This method of dehydrating a starter is actually really good if you want to gift it to a friend, and it can be activated whenever they like. There are loads of ways to revive your starter, but here I'm just going to act as if I'm feeding a perfectly normal and healthy starter, which resulted in it needing a few extra feeds. So starting here with 15 grams of dehydrated starter. Add in 15 grams of bread flour and 15 grams of water. The starter ends up quite thick at first, but I just give it a good mix. I'm topping it up again here with another 15 grams of bread flour and 15 grams of water. The starter ends up just a little bit thinner than it was before, but it doesn't matter too much, just give it a good mix. I'm going to mark the jar again just so I can see if the starter line rises and falls. Then every day I'll just repeat the process. Discard and top up with flour and water as many times as I need until the starter gives a nice double in size, or at least a significant height change in your starter. If you're gifting your starter to someone, just remember and tell them to name it. So if you don't already have a sourdough starter backup, you should probably have one. After all, you don't want to have to scrape Marlon Brando off your kitchen floor. If you want to know the full process on feeding and maintaining your sourdough starter, then check out my video linked here.